Hi everyone. I don't know how John managed with these lights, so I'm going to go over here. Good morning. The first thing I want to do is give a little bit of a shout out to QCware and Matt Johnson and everybody who originally conceived of this event, Q2B, which was a very long time ago now, but sometimes seems like it was yesterday. And the reason I want to do that is that ultimately all the stuff that John was just talking about, including his final comment about balance, really is about resourcing. I mean, how do we, all of us who are involved in the quantum industry, how do we motivate ourselves ultimately beyond the science, because we're on the cusp of what I think is an industrial revolution, and whether it's a year away or 20 years away, it is happening. How do we ultimately motivate ourselves to have the resources? And over the course of the last 5 years, particularly the last 3 years, quantum computing and quantum technologies have become geopolitical in nature. When is the last time that a single technology had national programs in China, Japan, the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, France, the Netherlands? I could go on. Never happened in my lifetime. I'm older significantly by most of you. I'll be 60 next year. And these types of things that happen don't happen by accident. And I think the idea of Q2B and the motivation for us all as a community to think about how we can be resourced to achieve the dreams that drive us is really important. And so, unscheduled, but for the first minute or two, I really want to do a shout out to Q2B. Fantastic performance. And Matt, only you could have pulled it off. And we're very, very grateful to you. So back to the main script. Fantastic pleasure to be here. I was last here in California 2 years ago. One of my colleagues has been to every Q2B, and my partner, my friend, my partner in crime, I should say now, Tony Uttley, and I are going to spend the next 20-odd minutes chatting a little bit about what we're up to at Quantinuum. And Quantinuum, as some of you may know, is the name of our company, our merged company, our combined company. Cambridge Quantum, which was a business that was founded in 2014 by myself, and Honeywell Quantum Solutions, which was incubated within Honeywell, the group, the US group, have now merged. That merger was sort of heralded at some point in the second quarter of this year. It was formally announced at the beginning of June, and subject to various regulatory procedures, we've now completed the deal, and the new company is called Quantinuum. It is a large company in some respects. In this nascent industry of ours, we are currently the largest. There's about 400 of us. We're split equally between the United States and internationally. As you can imagine, we're predominantly scientists. Over 300 of the 400 people are scientists. And we continue to focus on the core foundations of what John was talking about, scientific discovery, so that at some point in time, all of the things that we all believe in can become real. We offer scale. We hope we're an accelerator. We will become a client for many of you guys. If you are in the hardware industry and you have a device, we could well become your client. We are platform agnostic. We have a device of our own, very beautiful device that Tony's going to talk about, but there's far more demand than is currently available in the devices on the market. So we are an accelerator, we are a client, and of course, we are an innovator as well. And together, Quantinuum, the new company, and hopefully it's a name that you guys will get used to, is a perfect example of what I think is a spectrum that gets covered between now and at some point, whenever fault-tolerant computers become available and commercially relevant. We look at stuff which is near-term, we look at stuff which is a little bit further down the road. The story itself goes back a little while. Actually, this thing starts at 2011, but I remember speaking to the chairman of Honeywell at the time, a guy called Dave Cote. I think Tony will remember better than I, but it was actually a seed in 2008 that was picked up. Tony will tell the story way better than I do. But if you fast forward to around about 2011, That's when the actual hardware side got kickstarted. Our side of the story in the United Kingdom was in 2013 and 2014. I, at the time, was the chairman of the Stephen Hawking Foundation. And we were motivated to get started by a comment that Stephen made to me in Cambridge around Christmas 2013. Since that time, CQC and Honeywell, a little bit later on, became very closely involved in scientific collaboration. I think we have more access at that point to prior to the merger to the Honeywell device than anybody else. We were beta testers. Honeywell was an investor in Cambridge Quantum. We were clients of Honeywell. Honeywell were clients of ourselves. And of course, the merger then came along and was announced in June. And our new name was announced about a week ago. That's a sort of a potted summary of our journey so far. We do cover the spectrum. Now, what does that actually mean? It's a slightly cluttered slide, but I think it's worth just spending a few moments on this. So if we take it from the bottom up, many of you will be familiar, I hope, with Cambridge Quantum because of what we do in the middleware. We were pioneers in developing something called Ticket, which is a platform-agnostic middleware that started off life as a compiler, and it very quickly took on other attributes, including routing. And a little bit later on, around about the end of 2018, early 2019, we started to look at how to optimize circuits. A colleague of mine yesterday, Mark Jackson, was presenting on this topic yesterday. And then earlier this year, we announced the open sourcing of Ticket. And today we have literally hundreds of thousands of software developers all over the world who are actively involved in the development of what we think of as an accelerator for the entire community. We support more backends than anybody else, and that's deliberate. We want the whole of the ecosystem to be successful. It's not about one machine being better than the other. In fact, an intuition that Tony and I have, and I think perhaps shared by many of you in the industry, is that actually different types of qubits might work together to solve problems in alignment with classical high-performance compute. And that voyage of discovery will continue. We ourselves, Quantinuum, are also an IBM quantum hub through Cambridge Quantum. So we look at all types of technologies, and we will be an active investor in this area going forward. So if you do have an idea or you think that we can be a great investor in what you're doing, come and talk to us. We're funded. We're well funded. And going back to John's point, unless we get those resources, nothing will happen in this industry. So having the resources, having the scale, having that platform in the middle and the middleware, and we'll be announcing an operating system at some point in the early part of next year, these are the things that are the essential components that make this a reality. Slightly above that, we're starting to look at the application side. Now, that word itself is a hostage to the last 70 years of the compute program that we've all lived through. So is it really an application? Well, of course it isn't. So what have we done? What we've decided to do is we focused on developing product rather than developing professional services. It's our choice. That's who we are. Many of you who are on the software side have a different path. They converge and they're in alignment. But what we focused on is the following. Yesterday, we announced what we believe is the first actual product from an actual quantum computer that can actually be used where customers can pay for something that solves a problem. I'm going to come back to that later on. It's in the cybersecurity area. 5 years in development. Is an invention of Fernando Brandão at Caltech and Simone Severini, who's talking after me. We acquired the technology a while back, perfected it, and it now is available. People can pay for keys that are generated from the H1 system, which is Honeywell powered, and which can solve a problem today. Now, this was anticipated, 2019 Q2B, and in fact, the Google conversation around supremacy was that the first practical application of quantum computers that generates the revenue that gets the attention of people who've got the purse strings will be cybersecurity. And they were right. And that's what we launched yesterday. In cybersecurity, there is a different perspective that we have because we're on the defensive side. We're not talking here about Shor's algorithm. We also then, like many people, are focused on quantum chemistry. Within quantum chemistry, we have two bits to our business. We look on the one hand at how we can focus on big problems that might take a few years to solve, but we're prepared to start working on them today. Carbon sequestration with Total, Alzheimer's with Roche. We're working with GSR for materials in the semiconductor industry. We're working with a Japanese company called Nippon Steel for advanced materials in space travel, graphene. Now, these breakthroughs might not happen overnight. We have a project with the Honeywell parent on refrigerants. But at the same time, we've developed a computational chemistry tool called Human that will be launched at some point next year. Why at some point? Why can't I give you a time? Well, it depends upon the way in which our hardware will develop, and Tony's going to talk about that as well. Further along the line, we have quantum artificial intelligence. Many of you here who follow the field will have been aware of our breakthrough, our pioneering breakthrough on language processing. These are things that classical computers cannot do. And we announced and proved that language processing is quantum native. The circuits that we're utilizing are quantum native. This is not something that's going to be commercially relevant today or tomorrow or even in 2 or 3 or 4 years' time. But it will be, perhaps in 5 years' time or 7 years' time. It's a huge market. It potentially is the hugest market of what we do. Because if you tackle language processing, what do you then tackle? You tackle artificial intelligence. And that's what matters. And within that, we're looking also at optimization, Monte Carlo simulations. So these are the areas that we're focused on: cybersecurity, chemistry, artificial intelligence, natural language processing. Now, we have a slogan that we've adopted. We're science-led and enterprise-driven. We have published. Our joint company, and if there's anybody with more publications than us in the last 3 years, then come and make yourselves known. We have dozens of publications. We publish, we are there to be challenged, we have a public roadmap. We tell people what we do. Once we've done it, we come back and confirm it. We take away the mystery, and we hope that together with the consensus that is now forming, we can have the language so that we're on the right side of what John Preskill just said, so that we can be ambitious, we can dream and aspire, but we've got the language that allows the rest of the world to feel confident that we're on a roadmap together, because this will change the world. It might not be in 3 years' time, but obviously I don't need to tell you lot that it will change the world. It's the biggest industrial revolution that's ever happened since the late 18th and early 19th century, and of course it will change the world. So science-led enterprise-driven means that large organizations can safely adopt this journey with us. I'm going to finish on what we, my part of it, I'm going to hand over to Tony, you're not rid of us yet, with the announcement that we made yesterday, which is Quantum Origin. Quantum Origin is a product. It is based on a technology that we used to refer to as Iron Bridge, which is the extraction of verifiable quantum entropy. It's a self-testing mechanism. There's no reason to trust the device. It is device independent. And it is the reason why, because it's device independent, it is a new generation of quantum random number generation. It's exactly the thing that supremacy was based on. Why is it that quantum random number generators have been a niche industry for 20 years? Nobody uses them. It's because you've got to trust the bloody device, and nobody does that in cryptography. We've solved that problem. And this is a global launch. It is partnered with customers and clients that will be made public over the course of the next few days, and this is real. It comes from a real quantum computer. It cannot be done on a classical computer. It is also a product that people can point to and take comfort from, and this is therefore real. I was on this morning in an interview with Fox News. Of course, they are interested in the technology, but what are they more interested in? What is the problem you're solving? So now this industry, collectively, we together can do this. And if you have a device If you think we can run our quantum circuits that generate these keys on your device, come and talk to us. But we go through Ticket anyway, so we can accommodate the back end. This is really important. I'm going to now, one more slide. So the low-hanging fruit to use this verifiable quantum entropy is the generation of cryptographic keys. But the cybersecurity business is an enormous business. It's a huge business. In fact, I think it was 2 weeks ago, the largest sector of value attributable to quantum at the moment is seen to be cybersecurity, and for obvious reasons. And so this is some of the other products that we will be launching over the course of the next year or so. At the moment, we're focusing on the keys. I think on that basis, I'm just going to hand over to Tony. We have in the public domain announced some of our partners and some of the use cases. There are many, many, many more organizations that have been involved in this, and they're all available either from the material that we've made public or from our respective websites. And on that basis, I'm going to hand over to Tony.
Thank you. All right, it's good to be here. You said it a number of times. If you've walked by our booth, you've seen us saying accelerating quantum computing. So how do you do that, right? How do you accelerate this industry that the concept of which has been around for many decades? A lot of the principal foundational pieces have been around for many decades. It's because we're at a place right now where these things, and these things being products that can be derived out of quantum computers, can be made real. And when you make them real, then people pay attention. When they pay attention, oftentimes what comes with that is resources, money. In addition to the resources being money is the people, the know-how. You have to have expertise. And one of the best parts of being able to go do this in our company is to work with the customer who knows more about their space than we will ever know. But to have domain experts within that discipline that can go along with them. If you're going to work with big chemicals companies, with big pharmaceutical companies, you have to be able to speak that language, which means you have to have chemists. If you're going to be speaking to the financial services industry, you have to have financial services experts. It doesn't help to walk in and start just kind of waving your hands. These are things that, as a customer in this space, as a provider in this space, you have to have a common language. And unfortunately, it's not quantum. That's not where the common language starts. The common language starts with whatever business that they are in. And so being able to have that domain expertise that goes along with real product development starts to accelerate the entire industry. We are platform inclusive. And I know I was up on stage 2 years ago talking about the Honeywell H-series quantum computers, and we'll keep on doing that. We have our H-series quantum computers within Quantinuum. But as Ilyas said, I'll be the first person to say, this is a big space. This is a big space for hardware development and for opportunities where not only can you have a particular quantum computer that might be better at doing a particular application. You know, a lot of this is, and you know this as much as I do, this is based on physics. As John said, you know, a superconducting system will compute about 1,000 times faster than our trapped ion quantum computer. We can also keep our ions coherent for about 500,000 times longer. There's a lot you can go do in that 500,000 times longer. We can entangle these qubits because we move them around. That all-to-all connectivity with very high fidelities allows you to do things. And are there use cases where that is likely to be more applicable? Yes. Are there use cases where superconducting systems or photonic systems might be better? We are absolutely open to that, not just in conceptual, but because of how we're operating, actually working with those companies to be able to find algorithms where parsing that algorithm into separate chunks to have one piece done by a trapped ion quantum computer, another piece done by a superconducting quantum computer, that can be a reality. That's where that foundational operating system comes from. To be able to take it and break down work into a more heterogeneous compute style to be able to get things done. That's where we are in this industry. We want to be able to spend the time doing that. We do have some advantages being able to have the hardware that we do in-house to be able to both develop the hardware and work on some of these really tough problems. And we're living in a fabulous era right now, an incredible period of time where you can do quantum computing and you can simulate the answer with classical computing. Sometime in the future, this period of time that we're living in is going to look like a sliver. It's going to look like a magical sliver that existed where you could take problems, actually compute them on a quantum computer, and validate that you were getting the right answer. This is about building trust. This entire community right now in the moment that we are living in is about building trust. And building that trust takes the people to be able to go do it and being able to do what you say you're going to do. That just history that has to repeat itself over and over again that continues to then build upon that trust. So why do I show these industries that other people talk about? Is that because this is where we think there's going to be advantages? Yes. But in particular, we show them because in each of these areas, we are working with companies who are in this space along with us, who are experts in this space, and who care about the development of a quantum solution. And the great thing about the chemicals, materials science, pharmaceutical industry as a whole is that when you're developing these, it's oftentimes a decade-long development cycle. If you're in, or you're just about to begin, a decade-long development cycle, you're willing to make a bet on quantum computing coming along somewhere along that decade of evolution that might be able to bring in time periods by meaningful amounts. I was a consultant before coming into Honeywell, and I remember one of our big pharma clients sending about 100 people on a plane with all the material that they had in boxes to sit right outside of the FDA, because if they could just get one extra day of approval for that particular drug, it was $1 million in profit. Each day was $1 million in profit because these patented products, that patent expires. So there are companies that care about this space because that is how the world works. The nice thing about having an integrated view of quantum computing within Quantinuum is that in addition to being able to look at these specific application spaces, in addition to be able to have that layer of optimization, that layer of operating system, we actually can think about the hardware a bit differently too. We also have a roadmap that wants to get to universal fault tolerance. But you don't necessarily have to get there first. In fact, being able to think about applications where you can make changes to the hardware for that application is possible. It's especially possible if you can control the architecture. And within our company, that's what we do. We actually control the architecture of the system all the way at the trap level to define how we make these systems work. And being able to have all of that integrated together as a single solution that can be provided to the customers that we're interacting with is a gigantic benefit. It's always about people. Now, this is, our products are great, our IP is great, our systems are great. It's nothing without the people. And being able to have a consolidated group of 400 people who are focused on quantum computing, experts across multiple disciplines, including functional disciplines that allow a company to actually run and work when integrated with 330 of the best scientific and technical minds out there. Yeah, it's huge. It allows us to rely on things that we were able to build from Honeywell, where quantum computing on the hardware side always starts as a gigantic physics problem. Always starts there. And then it ends with a gigantic controls problem. That's where it goes. And it goes very quickly in that direction. And if you want to be able to figure out how we do real-time quantum error correction, it becomes a controls issue. And we've been able to bring that forward from this history of company living inside of Honeywell, or right now being within Quantinuum. So how do you get there? How do you become part of the entire revolution of quantum computing? It does start with scale. And as Ilyas mentioned, we want to be not the center of gravity for quantum computing. We do expect to be customers of many of you. We want to have ideas because in our organization, which I think extends to many of the groups here, the best idea wins. That's how it works. And if you have great ideas that say, hey, have you guys thought about this? Have we tried this? Can we go work on this? Those are things that we are not just paying attention to, not just open to, we are relying upon to be able to help accelerate the entire industry. We bring the domain expertise in many of these areas, but there are going to be others that, whether it's software applications, specific use cases, where the combination of that use case, our middleware, our hardware, that might be the best solution for these customers, and we want to be able to work with you to go do that. Ilyas mentioned it. I was really glad to see John mention it. This is all about actual transparency at this point. It is easy to get up there and hype. We want to do that on one hand because we want people to be excited. We want resources to come in. But it can't come without the support that says you can actually do what you said you can do. Anybody knows that if you run on some of the hardware today, it takes about 3 minutes of time before you can tell whether or not the system does what you said it was going to do. That's how long it takes. You run a number of circuits and figure out whether or not it really does what people said it does. This is going to be a period of time that's incumbent upon all of us to provide that transparency. Some of these are going to be super exciting. Some of these are going to be failures. And that's okay. When we highlight the failures and say, this didn't work, let's try another approach, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing for the entire community. And we, Quantinuum, will be a part of that. And we want this entire ecosystem to be a part of that. But there are some exciting things that happen along the way. We do want to get to a point where we have universal fault-tolerant quantum computers. And there's a set of ingredients that must go along to get there. Things like mid-circuit measurement, which if we're looking at is a long time in the making. That is not Honeywell doing that. That is not Quantinuum. That is not Cambridge Quantum. This is NIST. NIST doing early development work to figure out, can you do measurement of a qubit in the middle of a computation? Can that even happen? Is that possible? NIST also, can you do the conditional logic necessary to be able to do something, to take action as some operation is taking place in real time? Still, again, 17 years ago in the making, qubit reuse. Again, NIST. Can we take those qubits once we've measured them? Can we do something with them? Is there a way to be able to put that back into the system to start taking advantage of that? This is a long time in the making. We are standing on the shoulders of people who have spent decades of research putting this together. So why does it take so long to then take that next step? Because some of these, when they're done to prove a specific point. And in this case, it did prove a specific point. The community then comes together, and this is Innsbruck, to be able to say, can you create on top of that a logical qubit? Can you define that? Can you create it? Can you make sure that now we can test for it? That happened, again, quite a long time ago. But it takes time for systems to be able to go and develop, to be able to put in place not just the technology from a physics standpoint, but from a control standpoint. And then it starts to accelerate. Earlier this year, we talked about doing real-time quantum error correction, right? Multiple rounds of syndrome extraction. Just recently, Innsbruck said, hey, we can initialize multiple logical qubits and entangle them. And even in their paper, they said the next step is, what about being able to take those entangled logical qubits and do real-time quantum error correction on that? And so I would encourage you all, if you are interested in this space, if you're interested in what does it take to actually go do that, entangle multiple logical qubits and do real-time quantum error correction, come and see Dr. Ryan Anderson tomorrow as he's presenting, because as we said, we want to be able to show, we want to be able to demonstrate and prove with data that this entire industry is accelerating at the pace that we would like it to. So with that, I thank you very much for your attention.